Good Friday morning. Great to be back inside Mr. Small's Theater and the River's Edge Studios here after my warm-up walk up the hill. I've determined after visiting very many places in this world that there are very few places like this place where every walk from point A to point B involves some sort of an incline or decline. In the case of approaching Mr. Small's Theater for my weekly show, which is Gike's Got Game, and thank you for watching or listening, I parked down on Lincoln Avenue here, if you're familiar with the Millvale geography, and then I walk up Butler Street from there, and it's about a 1-minute walk, but it's about a 45-degree grade, it feels like, at least. So, yeah, the calves are barking, the brain is engaged with a little extra blood pumping through the body. I'm not going to complain too much about it, because usually that's always the struggle here is, getting everything engaged and ready to go. Typically a morning person, but never hurts to have that little extra edge. So I thank you to whoever put Mr. Small's Theater on this hill, whoever built Pittsburgh, whoever conceived of this, I suppose George Washington and all the folks back in the day when they saw the Three Rivers and they said, hey, that's a good strategic spot to build a city. It's led to benefits down the road, many centuries in the future, as it turns out. Enough of the digression. It's a quarter past the hour. We had some internet issues here that delayed the start of the show, but here we are, and I'll be with you for the next hour. My name is Matt Geica. I am, a sports media professional is how I'll call it. It's been a year of shifts, a year of changes for yours truly in terms of career, and, I'll get into that a little bit later in the program, but one bastion of stability for me has been this program over the past 3 years, 3+ years, in fact. We started it up in the summer of 2015, in July of 2015, in fact. So here we are in August 2018. Thank you for hanging in there with me, whether it be just today waiting for the show to start or throughout the duration of this program. It's been my joy to bring it to you. It's not your typical sports talk radio. I do bring the sports aspect here to the River's Edge, and I'm proud to do it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm also proud to bring you something different, and I hope I do bring that each and every week. Now, last week, it literally wasn't something different. It was a rerun because my brother Mark got married, and he had a 2-day situation there. It's kind of like, the wedding ceremonies in other countries. I was thinking about India and how they have a whole week or whatever it is when someone gets married. In this case, it was an entire weekend that was taken up, and it was my pleasure to be a part of it. Friday was the Catholic ceremony. Saturday was the secular ceremony and the reception. So, yeah, we made a whole weekend out of it. And as a result, couldn't stop by and say hi to you on this show, but my aim is to make up for it here on this morning. Again, you can find me on social media, and you may, in fact, be watching this program on my Facebook page right now. That is Matt Geica Media, MattGajTka. I'll say it again, Gajtka. That's the last name. Blame the Polish ancestors for that one. But that's where you can find my streaming video on Facebook, and you can also leave a comment there. I check periodically during the show, and I'm on Twitter as well. Just Matt Geica there, no spaces, no underscores. Fortunately, there's no one else with that name, or at least who tried to put that name as a Twitter username. So I'm fortunate there in that way. Tyler Zelenko is the man you see to my left, stage right, producing the program. Thanks to him for his work, as always, and to Brian Crawford, the founder of The Feast, the man who got me on this program in the first place. It's kind of a theme show, I should say. Maybe I could use a little bit more of a warm-up. It's a theme show this week, this Friday morning. As we get close to the end of August, it's a transition in seasons, right? Everyone's thinking about going back to school. I'm glad I'm past that stage. But still, August always gets me in a changed frame of mind. I don't know about you, but that sort of thing has stuck with me, even into my age 33 season. But I don't want to talk about football, or American football at the very least. I've been kind of disconnected from baseball. The national pastime, I'm not sure it still is at this point, but it has always been something that I've had a lot of interest in over the years. It's been a borderline obsession of mine over the years, but not so much this summer, and for various reasons. And I want to put baseball under the microscope. I want to perform some surgery on baseball, as I put it on the show description here on Facebook and Twitter this morning. I want to talk about some things that have me feeling less optimistic about baseball's continued presence, continued relevance in our culture, and maybe some ways that we can give it a little boost here. And to help me do that later in this hour will be my good friend and colleague, frequent colleague, Alan Saunders. He'll be joining me in about 10 minutes' time to discuss what he thinks about what I have to say here. I know we don't always agree on everything, which makes for interesting banter, of course. But I do want to put baseball on notice because, like I said, I was one of the more diehard baseball fans for a long time. And for whatever reason, maybe it's just a one-year blip, but this year just hasn't felt the same. Perhaps some of those things or some of those reasons why are personal, because I have disconnected from covering the Pirates on a full-time basis. I check in every now and again over there at PNC Park, but nothing like it was in late 2015 and throughout the 2016 season when I was a beat reporter. That was my job for DKPittsburghSports.com. Not like last year when I split the duties with Dustin Dopirak over at that same website. This year, I'm writing a weekly column or bi-weekly column at times for Pirates Prospects, but that's about it. I've been more of a fan than I have been since the 2014 season, and part of that's good because you get to disconnect and unplug, to use a Clint Hurdleism. If you're a Pirates fan, you're familiar with that one. But there's also been a step back that I've taken, and even last night when I didn't have a lot going on, I just couldn't bring myself to get locked in on the Pirates game. An important game if you believe that the Pirates still have a chance to make the playoffs. Now their playoff odds are around 5%, depending on where you look. But a game against the Cubs at home, a chance to rebound from a two-game sweep at the hands of the Twins this week. And it was tight all the way through, but I felt like I had other things to do. I was putting the baby to bed, of course. There you go. I have a toddler at home now, and so that cuts into the baseball viewing time. But that's not the only reason. That's not it alone. I've been watching, for instance, what have I replaced baseball with? That's what I keep thinking about. I've been playing more golf. I've been watching more golf, trying to get more into it from a competitive standpoint. I have a little mini tournament this weekend, so more time devoted to that, to practicing, to doing something myself instead of watching, which has been a goal of mine in 2018. That was one of those New Year's resolutions: participate more than observe. And so in that way, I suppose baseball has fallen off and has been it's been the aspect of my life that's gotten short shrift because of that change in lifestyle. But also, like I said, I've been watching more golf, and I've talked about Tiger Woods frequently on this show. I just find his return to the game, his return to the sport, to be the most compelling thing about this summer. And apologies to baseball. And, well, when the World Cup was going on, that was right at the top of mind, too. But since that has gone away, and besides my duties with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds soccer team here in town, besides my duties calling those games and writing a bit about them for Pittsburgh Soccer now, it's been mostly golf. That's been my big spectator sports experience this summer. Maybe that'll go away once the novelty of having Woods back in the fold goes away, but I'm not sure about that. At least this summer, it's been fairly easy for me to replace one leisurely paced sport, baseball, with another in golf. But I've also found plenty of reasons to critique baseball as an entity, not because of certain changes in my life, certain things that have been adjusted and have left less free time or less desire for me to watch MLB baseball. But the MLB brand for me still continues to be lacking in some ways. And on today's show, I hope to go over a few of those for you. And as always, you can let me know what you think. Facebook, Twitter. I'm checking the comments as always. But let's start with this one. This was a moment that I think made me the most infuriated this season out of all the moments that I've at least been a little bit annoyed by Major League Baseball and the direction that it's going in. It just happened a couple of days ago, and it wasn't a Pirates game. It wasn't about the Pirates at all. They can be frustrating in and of themselves as they continue to bounce back and forth, and now at dead 500, even after the adrenaline of the Chris Archer trade and all that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But this wasn't anything to do with the Pittsburgh Baseball Club. This was about Braves and Marlins, of all teams. And this was about Ronald Ocuña, the Braves' young hitting star, and Jose Ureña, a young pitcher for the Marlins. Well, maybe not so young anymore, definitely mediocre This occurred Tuesday night down in Atlanta at SunTrust Park. Ocuña, in case you don't know the story, for the Braves, had led off 3 straight games with home runs. 3 straight with a leadoff homer. And his attempt to make it 4 and his attempt to put himself further into the MLB history books was cut short when Ureña drilled him in the elbow with a first pitch fastball. So, first of all, what a shame. We're robbed of that opportunity to see a hitter go for something historic. To start a game with a home run for the 4th straight time, I know I've never seen it, and it would have been cool to see it. Heck, 3 in a row was pretty amazing, including both ends of a doubleheader, by the way, earlier in the week. But that wasn't the part of it that really bothered me. The part of it that bothered me was that there was no reason for Ocuña to hit, or for Ureña to hit Ocuña, pardon me. Too many tildes in there, I think. It's messing me up. But there was no reason for Ocuña to be punished for his good hitting. And this just seems like it occasionally comes up in baseball where if a guy's hitting really well, and you heard Keith Hernandez on the Mets broadcast talk about it this week, if a guy's going well and a guy's hot and he's killing your pitching staff, then all of a sudden the thought creeps in, I don't know where this comes from way back in the day, I'm assuming, in the sport of baseball, that the hitter should be plunked. You should be hit to send a message that, I don't know what the message is, besides we're going to inflict some pain on you because you've inflicted some pain on us in a different way. And from my side of the aisle here, baseball can't afford to have these kind of incidents be in the public eye because participation continues to be down among youngsters. Attendance is down across Major League Baseball. It wasn't just the bad weather. It's not just the Pirates and the Marlins and some other teams who perhaps disenfranchise their fan bases. Attendance is flat down for most teams, and there isn't really a good explanation outside of just the product itself is less compelling. And, as I've talked about it frequently on this show in the past, team sports can't afford to have any slippage here because there are other entertainment options. There are so many ways for you to spend a night as opposed to flicking on the local baseball team. So, well, I'm a good example of that, right? I've drifted away myself because I have found the product, for whatever reason, less compelling. And I don't think there's anyone out there who thinks that what the Marlins pitcher Ureña did to Ocuña, hitting him for no reason, hitting him intentionally, by the way, as was determined by Major League Baseball, since they suspended him 6 games. But that sort of thing turns you off, or at least it turns me off on baseball. And I would think if I were a young and up-and-coming athlete and I have a choice to play baseball or another sport and I see this happening, I say, so let me get this straight. If I get to the highest level, if I perform well, if I'm excellent at what I do, then I stand the chance of being retaliated against for no reason. And there was no disrespect. There was no gratuitous taunting by Ocuña after any of these home runs. To be clear, there was nothing outside of the very act of hitting the home run that inspired the retaliation, apparently, from Jose Ureña. So that's really troubling for me. And with Major League Baseball, to their credit, trying to reach out to young players more with the Players Weekend, the gaudy jerseys, the nicknames on the back, playing in Williamsport at the Little League Baseball, the home of Little League Baseball, not their literal field, but like the Pirates and the Cardinals did last year, the Phillies and the Mets will play this week in front of a stadium full of Little Leaguers, historic Bowman Field up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. All these initiatives to try to make the game more palatable, more enjoyable, more accessible, all that doesn't matter if young players are seeing excellence punished for no good reason. And it's these little parts of baseball, the old school baseball, that continue to pop up and, in my view, get in the way of the game moving forward and maintaining a spot in the cultural landscape. And, not to mention, it's just flat dangerous to throw a baseball at another human being. Pitchers are throwing harder than ever. I believe the average fastball is up about 3 miles an hour over the last 10 years. Doesn't sound like a lot, but for the entirety of baseball, all pitchers to move 3 miles per hour in 10 years, that's a big deal. And with the increased velocity, you could argue comes a relative lack of control. And at the very least, increased velocity means more danger for the hitter. And I don't know if I trust a lot of these guys to, if they're aiming for a guy's back, to not hit him in the head or in the neck. And so that's where the whole concept of this retaliation, whether it be for something that is perceived as legitimate or something that is perceived as illegitimate, it's bad news for everybody. And Also, the hitter doesn't have that much of a chance to retaliate, does he, in this spot too? So the whole thing is flawed in its reasoning. The whole concept of hitting a player, first of all, with a baseball, and especially in this case, when it was just a guy doing well. I know this is just one case. This hasn't happened anywhere else in baseball this season, as far as I know, but just this one case standing out, making news, it's harmful to baseball, and it turns people like me off, and maybe more harmful for baseball long term. I think it'll turn young athletes off of the sport, which is already fighting a perception of being old-timey and behind the times, too slow for modern life. And you throw this in, then, well, it's not helping anything. And I don't think baseball is a sport that can afford to poke itself in the eye or shoot itself in the foot in such a fashion. So the 6-game suspension for Ureña, it could have been anywhere up to 60 as far as I'm concerned. It was that egregious, and it's that harmful to the growth of baseball, and especially the Major League Baseball brand, which, as I've gone over, isn't exactly thriving. After about a decade of increased attendance, it's going downhill. And the major events, All-Star games, playoffs, the ratings are pretty stagnant, if not outright declining. So there are plenty of things to worry about, and this is one thing that baseball might be able to get a handle on with a harsher suspension, perhaps. I think they whiffed on that, and I think they need to look for ways to try to eradicate this type of thinking from baseball culture. This is Gike's Got Game on the River's Edge, and we're performing surgery on the national pastime today. I'm trying to figure out exactly why I have felt maybe not disenfranchised, but a little more disinterested than usual in the game, and why I believe that there are certain ways that baseball can actually make it easier on itself and continue to at least be a part of the conversation here. Now, I think it's increasingly not part of the general sports conversation. Anyway, more on that coming up on the other side of this break. Alan Saunders will join me here on the River's Edge via the phone lines, and we'll discuss some things that came up last night, in fact, during the Pirates-Cubs game. This is the River's Edge, and you're watching or listening to Gike's Got Game.
Hey folks, it's Mike Sasson of The Mike Sasson Show. Me and Alex, my producer extraordinaire, looked at the landscape of internet radio and figured if we want to make it, we've got to work. At least an hour earlier. Now on at 9 a.m. every Tuesday on the River's Edge, a new kind of radio.
And we're back inside Mr. Small's Theater. I say we because alongside myself, Matt Geica, is Tyler Zelenko, and Tyler's got our friend Alan Saunders on the line to talk about Major League Baseball and a little bit about the Pirates, too. But you are listening to Gike's Got Game on the River's Edge. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com. Back in studio after a week off due to my brother's wedding. And 2 weeks ago, if you watched the show, Mark and I were sitting here enjoying a couple of Oscar Blues beers. His friend works in distribution for them, so we had a little cross-promotion going on. It was a Thursday afternoon happy hour, if you will, edition of Gike's Got Game. But back on Friday morning, and as we often have on the program, we have Alan Saunders on the line, as I mentioned. And Alan's on the road going somewhere. Where are you headed, sir? Well, that's good. I appreciate you taking that time. And you and I have often had some conversations. We spent a lot of time together in the PNC Park press box discussing baseball. And with the nature of baseball, it's, it's leisurely, as I said. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But you and I got into a discussion on Twitter this morning. I figured we'd continue it over. Last night in Pirates and Cubs at PNC Park, there was a moment where it was in doubt whether Clint Hurdle was going to pinch hit for Ivan Nova, the Pirates pitcher, who's a terrible hitter, probably one of the worst I've ever seen in my time watching MLB. And so instead of going to the pinch hitter, Hurdle decided with a runner on base and 2 outs, he would just keep the starter in there because he was pitching well. And reasonable decision, but for me, I understand the strategy and how that can be interesting for a lot of people, and it is for me on some base level. But when one of the choices is watching a terrible hitter flail away in a spot where a game might be turned otherwise, for me that's a problem. And for me that continues to hammer home the issue that my at least assertion that the National League should pick up the designated hitter just to eliminate this type of a situation and to inject some more entertainment into the proceedings. You feel otherwise because you feel like that just adds more intrigue to it. So would you care to elaborate on your point there?
Yeah, I guess my point is that, yes, watching a pitcher that can't hit is boring and awful. 95% of most baseball games are boring and awful anyway.
Okay.
And, you're not going to make the sport more interesting by just substituting a terrible hitter with, a 234 hitter, which is, the next best guy off the bench on most National League teams anyway. You're not going to invent another superstar just by adding a DH. You're just going to add one more mediocre hitter to a league that's already full of mediocre hitters. Baseball's boring. To me, for baseball, are the risk-reward strategic decisions that managers have to make. I think American League Baseball is terribly boring. I have a hard time watching it, to be honest. It's just not. It's not interesting to me. I want to talk about whether or not bunting was the right move, or whether or not pinch hitting for the pitcher was smart there, or does the team get rewarded for taking a risk and maybe exposing their bullpen by going for a pinch hitter like the situation that the Pirates had last night. To me, those are the things that make baseball interesting. I don't know. The rest of it, it's pretty dull. You got sometimes a 4-hour baseball game that has a total of 15 minutes of action in it, and I don't think one more average hitter in place of one bad hitter is really going to change that in any grand sense.
Okay, so if I may interpret your comments there, what you're saying is that this is one of the few good things about baseball, is the discussion afterward, and Clint Hurdle gets asked the question, and he responds to it, and he defends his stance there. You're saying without that, then it's just another, roll the lineup over, and we'll go from there. There's nothing to discuss. So I understand that side of it, but I just find it absurd, and I think it's stupid to continue this when the American League has had the DH since the early 70s, and from experience, I would have been more on your side, I think, Alan, or more on the ban the DH side if you want to go that militant with it. If I hadn't lived in Michigan for 3 years and watched a lot of Detroit Tigers baseball, I didn't even think about the DH pitcher conundrum when I was watching those games. Yeah, I'd see the DH the first few times, and I'd say, okay, that's a little bit weird, huh? But once the game got started, that's not what I'm watching for. And maybe it's just a matter of taste, right? Maybe it's just that. And perhaps baseball shouldn't be catering to people like me. It should be catering to people who really care about the strategy and just lock down those diehards. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't think there's any reason that it's bad for the leagues to be different. People say, it doesn't make any sense. Well, most of baseball's rules also don't make any sense. They just are that way because that's the way they've always been. I don't know, why can't you strike out on a foul ball? Or why can you strike out on a foul bunt? Or, I don't know, there's any number of, just random things that are random about baseball. Why is a ball that bounces over the fence a double? I don't know. It's just the way it's always been. So I don't think there's any reason that it has to make sense. I don't think there's any reason that it has to be equal. I'm fine with the leagues being different. In fact, I would be okay with the leagues being more different than they are. I mean, when I was growing up, there was certainly more of a different style of baseball that was played in the National League versus in the American League. And I'm not quite sure how that developed. I don't think it was all because of the DH. The National League teams played more of a hit-and-run style. They were more prone to stealing bases and more about power. I enjoyed that more, that there was a real difference in the way the game was played between the American League and the National League. It made things like the All-Star Game and the World Series and interleague play, when it first started, it made it, to me, more of an event to watch if you're just a general fan of the game and not necessarily, rooting for one team and one player. I thought that was one of the most interesting parts about those cross-league competitions. And I don't know, now I think it kind of feels like, is there any difference when the Pirates play the Twins or the Rockies, as they just did in the last week? I don't know. Basically the same. So I'd be all for the leagues being even more different than they are. I don't think I don't think putting them all in the same box needs to be a goal of anyone, really.
I just worry about it from a competitive standpoint, and that's always been my problem with once interleague play became a bigger deal. You can't have the Pirates go into Yankee Stadium or wherever, and they have a bench player who becomes their DH who's more on the team for perhaps defense or a different type of a skill set than the DH would be in the American League. So that's my problem. If you're going to have interleague play, then you have to standardize the two things, because then the competitive balance gets off. And I think we've seen that proven out over the long haul. American League teams have had a winning record against National League teams, and I can't prove that that's because of the DH disparity, but it's my belief that that is the main reason for that sort of thing. Not so much a talent disparity between the two leagues, but the fact that one team is built more for that type of baseball. A National League team is at more of a disadvantage going into an American League park than vice versa. That's always been my problem there, and that's why I want that consistency. I don't disagree with you overall on differences being interesting, so from that standpoint I understand, but if the two leagues are going to cross-pollinate, if you will, then I think that's a competitive issue. Anyway, let's move on from that. I want to talk about what I discussed in the opening segment here. Ronald Ocuña, rising star for the Braves, gets plunked by Jose Ureña, mediocre pitcher for the Marlins, just because Ocuña had the temerity to hit a lot of home runs recently and be really good at his job. That strikes me more so than any kind of like retaliation for pimping a home run or a hit by pitch earlier in a series or a season or what have you. Just hitting a guy because he's good at the sport, that seems so destructive to the growth of the game. That's the type of thing that baseball needs to come down really hard on. And 6 games for Ureña, I was saying, Alan, I could have suspended him for the rest of the season for that, because for me, there's no reason for it outside of spite, I guess. And that's just toxic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I sort of jokingly said on Twitter last night that I don't think 6 games is enough, but having to play for a team that's 25 games out in September is its own sort of punishment.
True.
You know, nobody wants to play in those games anyway. So I don't know that you're. I don't know that you'd offend Ureña anymore by making him sit out any longer. But I just think, to me, there's got to be a way that those kind of plays can be dealt with immediately. You know, like, to me, I think that's the biggest thing that could hurt a team. And to me, I think, you know, that there's got to be a way where, you know, if it's a football game and a football player goes off and throws a punch at somebody, you know, he gets thrown out and the team gets penalized 15 yards. I think there needs to be some sort of, in a hockey game, if you sucker punch at the guy on the other team, you get thrown out and your team gets shorthanded for 5 minutes. I think there needs to be some sort of team penalty in addition to the player penalty for when a pitcher gets thrown out of the game for hitting a batter. And it's got to be more than the guy gets first base. And I think if there was some kind of team penalty where your chances of winning the game go down, you might see, I'm not sure that the retaliation stuff, because a lot of times those are happening when a game is already out of hand. But you're not going to see somebody hit the first batter of the game and get thrown out for it and then cost the team a run in doing so or something like that. And I do think some kind of team penalty would really curb this, much more so than a lengthier suspension for a pitcher or any other way, really, to punish a team for doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. In soccer, you have the red card and you have to play a man down. It seems like every other sport has some sort of an in-game penalty there besides baseball, and perhaps that's why this practice has maintained its relative frequency over the years. I don't think it's as common as it used to be, and the fact that we're all still talking about this maybe speaks to the rarity of it happening these days, but overall, it shouldn't happen, and it's dangerous, and it's detrimental to the growth of the game. And I don't think these are controversial statements, so perhaps that's an adjustment that can be made there. So, well, Alan, I was going to close with what you would do to, quote-unquote, fix baseball, or we've talked about this before, what could you do to give it more cultural relevance? I think you and I have talked about, what was it, doing a doubleheader day or something like that. We had discussed that in the PNC press box in the past. Is there anything you would do, or do you feel like that it's just destined to continue to decline gradually because of how the world's changed, how people have changed, and baseball continues on, for the most part, in the same leisurely pace it always has been?
Yeah, I think some of it is just structural, right? You're not going to be able to change the fact that it's a really long season. The results of any one game essentially don't matter at all. And, I think you're never going to fix that. To me, I think the biggest thing that has to change is that baseball has to end its own cultural war on fun. Mm-hmm. To me, that has to change for baseball. I don't know how one person could implement it, but I think that the players need to recognize that they're hurting their own marketability, whether it's inside the game or outside the game. Nobody wants to idolize the guy who was known for his calm demeanor as he jogged around the bases after hitting a home run. That's not what we as people, as fans. It was a young boy. I loved Ozzie Smith because he was dramatic. He had flair. There was, a thing about him that stood out beyond just his physical talent, and that made him a marketable individual, which probably got him a lot of money individually. As a game, those are the things that people want to watch. We live in a highlight society. People want to watch the 30-second clip, and set the bat down and jog around the bases. It doesn't do it. And so I think the part of baseball culture that is, you can't have fun when you're out there, that needs to go in the worst way. And I think that is the biggest thing that is hurting the sport right now.
And the problem is that might be the toughest thing to fix. It's going to take a while, and you have to have that natural turnover. And I think eventually they'll get to a spot that's different from the current atmosphere. But overall, it's not really something you can push as a league. So I suppose it is up to the players and the people actually in the game, not necessarily the leaders or Commissioner Rob Manfred or anything like that. How about one last thing before you go? I said bad hitters hitting, in the case of pitchers hitting, is bad for the game. But I do still get amused when position players pitch, like we saw with the Phillies yesterday with Scott Kingery and Roman Quinn covering the final two innings of Philadelphia's blowout loss to the Mets. Does that still tickle your fancy? I think that's enjoyable just because it doesn't happen that often, even though I feel like it's come up more this year than before.
And, sort of putting the 2 points together, that is sort of one of the few times where baseball will let itself be fun, right? I mean, you'll see a guy out there on the mound laughing because, you got somebody who's swinging and miss at a curveball at 45 miles an hour or something like that. And, it's because those games are typically already out of hand before a guy gets into them. But that is fun, right? That's putting someone out of their element. That's putting a lot of pressure individually on a hitter because you don't want to be the guy that strikes out to a first baseman. And I think that's a lot of fun. And also, just in general, smart strategically, right? I mean, you're saving your bullpen for the games that matter. I think that part of baseball strategy is generally lost on a lot of people these days. You can't try your hardest to win 162 games in a row. Mm-hmm. There becomes a point often where you got to play for the next day, and I think that's an underappreciated part of the strategy of the game, and what a fun way to kind of highlight it. So I think that's got it all, right? It's got strategy, it's fun, it's interesting, and occasionally very highlight worthy when you see maybe a guy strike somebody out that has no business doing it.
I was just watching after the Pirates game last night. They had Eric Kratz pitching in 2016 for the Pirates, the former catcher they had for a bit, and he actually struck out Brandon Belt of the Giants. And, it adds some spice to it, so that's my argument in favor of that. So I'm not being a hypocrite here. At least I don't think I am in that way. And saying bad pitchers pitching, good. Bad hitters hitting, bad. At least that's that's my view on it, and it's just because of the rarity of the occasion. Well, it's not so rare for Alan to join us, but it has been lately, so it's good to reconnect with you here, buddy, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thanks for the time.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Matt.
That's Alan Saunders. I'm Matt Geica, back for the final segment, the third period of Geica's Got Game, a contracted edition of the show, coming up in just a few moments.
You didn't wash your hands! People who do not wash their hands should be fined. And I'm sorry, I don't know about all of you, but if you're gonna castrate me, you might as well just kill me! So enjoy your hot dog, you jackass!
Get educated with Brian Crawford, live Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. here on the River's Edge.
Back to wrap up Geica's Got Game. I am Geik. I am Matt Geica. Thank you for watching or listening on the River's Edge, found at riversedgepgh.com. And a hearty thank you to Alan Saunders for joining me over the phone, killing some time on the road. Hey, nothing wrong with that. As long as you are abiding by the local traffic laws. I know whenever I commute into West Virginia, I have to remember that I can't use my handset. I can't use the regular phone. I have to use the headset that I don't have. So I typically just put it on speaker and put it in my lap. Don't tell the state troopers in West Virginia because their laws are more stringent than they are in Pennsylvania, at least for right now. I'm not even sure about Ohio. I don't travel over there as much as I used to. So if any of you know, please let me know so I don't run afoul of the cops once I hit the road. And we all know the Ohio Turnpike might be the most boring road in all of Western civilization. But at any rate, speaking of boring, sometimes baseball can be boring. Alan Saunders said he finds that to be a feature, not a bug, necessarily. I'm always of the mindset, let's fix something, let's tweak it, let's test it. I would be a commissioner that would be very proactive in terms of experimentation. Because in my view, number one, it's just sports. It's not life or death. So if we try something for a while and it doesn't work, if we try something for one season and it doesn't work, then we go back and we fix it up and we try something different, or we go back to the status quo. It's my general feeling that we shouldn't be afraid to tinker with anything in life. That's always been my feeling in my life, and perhaps to my detriment, maybe I can fiddle with some things too much, from lifestyle to diet to my golf swing, but I think overall having an open mind is better than the alternative there. So, and that's why it's always fun to discuss these things with Alan, because he's always open to discussing several possibilities. Nothing is ever out of hand with that man, and it's one of the reasons why I respect the heck out of him. One of the reasons why he's a great guest on a talk show, and occasional fill-in host here on Geica's Got Game. Anyway, I brought up what I wanted to talk about, the final point on baseball, and I've heard people say that, for instance, what we saw last night in Philadelphia, or yesterday afternoon, in Game 1 of a doubleheader between the Phillies and the Mets, we saw Phillies manager Gabe Kapler, definitely someone that I look up to in the sports business, or just in life in general, because of how he sticks to his principles, data, verifiable evidence, also good health. He's been a role model of mine in those ways ever since he was still a player, or when he was a commentator on Fox Sports 1, now the manager of the Phillies, and putting some of these theories into practice. Last night or yesterday, we saw him be very liberal with the usage of position players as pitchers. He killed 2 innings in a game the Phillies were down 15-4. The Phillies ended up losing 24-4, but who cares, right? It's just one game. You put it in the past. You're not going to win the game down 11 going into the 8th inning. So why not, instead of burning actual relievers, put a couple position players in there? As Alan said, you have a few laughs maybe, and instead of worrying about what it looks like or making a quote-unquote mockery of the game, you put yourself in a better position to win the second game of said doubleheader, which the Phillies did win. Maybe not because of that directly, but they did win it 9-6, which helps my case, of course, that they saved some of the bullpen for a game that was actually up for grabs instead of a complete blowout. So, yeah, we see Scott Kingery throwing eephus pitches up there that don't even register on the stadium radar gun at Citizens Bank Park, and that might look weird to some people, but for me, weird is good, different is good, as long as it doesn't become a trend, and there's no way it will be, because bad pitchers pitching is not a way to win games. So in that way, the natural order of things takes care of it. And even though on the surface, like I was saying with Alan on the previous segment, it might sound like I'm a hypocrite or that I lack mental integrity. I still might, but in this case, I don't think I do. If I say that a bad hitter hitting in a pitcher is bad for the game, but yet a bad pitcher pitching is good and fun. I don't think those are necessarily opposing arguments there, because one thing, a bad hitter hitting in a pitcher happens all the time. It happens every day. 15 times in the National League, or 14 times in the National League, depending on interleague play and which ballparks things are in. But it happens a lot, is what I'm saying, in baseball. And as I got a tweet this morning that was actually a really good point about pitchers hitting in the National League and why we still do this, because it's mostly a throwaway at bat. And we're not fixing it, by the way. I'm not going to entertain arguments that, well, just make the pitchers better at hitting. That's not the easiest thing to do. Pitching is much more involved than it used to be. There's much more study involved. And if you want the pitcher to be good as he's going to be on the mound, as good as he can be on the mound, then you want him to devote all of his time, or the vast majority of his time, to pitching. And just hitting a little bit more once in a while isn't going to fix that. You're missing those developmental years. High school has DH a lot of times. Colleges have DH a lot of the times. I think all the time, in fact, in college. And low minors have the DH because they want to develop hitters. And you want to develop that one skill that'll get you to the major leagues. So the suggestion that pitchers should just get better at hitting and that'll fix it, it's not going to happen. I'm not into pushing a boulder up the hill only to have it roll back on me again just for the sake of trying, or being old school, or being or making pitchers accountable to their hitting. If it's just not going to happen, let's take the path of least resistance there and go away from it. But there was a tweet, and I'm trying to find it right now, if I may dig it up. Apparently I was very active on Twitter this morning. Yes, it came from Jack Stokely, and he said, "Oh, you didn't find yesterday exciting watching Nova flail away on the Bucks' only scoring chance? Who doesn't love feeling void of hope watching the number 8 hitter reach base, knowing the sad inevitable is usually 3 strikes away?" That is so eloquently put by Jack Stokely, so that's why I wanted to read it verbatim here. It's a great point, because even in a National League game, when you're getting toward the bottom of the order, and this happens both ways, when you're pitching to a team, you always say, well, I have that pitcher as an out, as an escape hatch. That's not good for the sport, is it? It just makes it makes for a cautious pitching to the 8 hitter, or in the case that Jack was talking about, say the number 8 hitter gets on with 2 outs, well, you're probably not going to score anyway, so why even pay attention to the 8 hitter? It actually takes energy away from the entire bottom of the order, because that pitcher is looming, at least early in the game. So for me, it's not just about 1 hitter out of 9, it's about 2 or even 3 hitters out of 9 that can be compromised because of this anachronism that is pitchers hitting. So that's my case. Expand the DH is the hashtag I would use, not ban the DH that you see from Bucko broadcaster Bob Walk. He spread the word. And like I said, maybe if I hadn't lived in Michigan for 3 years and watched AL baseball and realized that I didn't miss pitchers hitting at all, I might feel differently on this. I might still feel like I did when I was a kid or a young adult, and I was very vigilant on keeping National League Baseball the way it is. Now I just don't care anymore. I'm about making the game as good as possible, and for me it's not good. It's not as good as it could be with a bad hitter up there once every 9 trips through the batting order, once every 9 trips to the plate. How much sense does that make? For me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Before we go on today's show, I want to bring back a throwback segment here. I don't do it as regularly as I used to, partially because I ran out of cliches to ban, but I want to ban the cliche today. Usually I take on a bit of labored language or redundant language or some way of saying something that is annoying and trite and that we can spruce up with more creativity. In this case, I want to take on the entire minor league industrial complex in baseball. Yes, we'll continue and finish out with the theme of hardball here. There's a new minor league team coming to the Huntsville, Alabama area, and that's northern Alabama. They've had minor league baseball for a large portion of the city's history. It used to be the Huntsville Stars, I believe, of AA. They were in the Brewers organization for a long time, but neither here nor there. A team is relocating there from southern Alabama, and they are putting the potential name of this franchise up for a vote. And we have the final 5 here, and MILB.com has the coverage of this one if you want to look into it more deeply. But take my word for it, the names are ridiculously stupid. Comet Jockeys, Moon Possums, Space Chimps, Thunder Sharks, all one word with the S in Sharks capitalized, and Trash Pandas. I don't get Trash Panda as much. Maybe I should look into that. But, pardon me, a trash panda is local slang for a raccoon. Okay, that's kind of funny, actually. I never thought of it that way. But it's still a dumbass name for a baseball team, right? Thunder Sharks. What in the world? That one appears to be totally random. You may ask why comet, moon, space, all these space terms. Well, Huntsville contains a lot of the space program or industries tailored toward space exploration. So that's why they were the Huntsville Stars, because you shoot for the stars, obviously. Well, now the stars aren't good enough. It's got to be comet jockeys, moon possums, evidently a lot of possums in Huntsville, or space chimps. We've gone too far in the silly direction, is my point, on minor league names. And at some point, people thought it'd be funny to just make these names outright ridiculous, and I'm okay with having a little bit of fun, but now it's almost like we've jumped the shark, or jumped the thunder shark, if you will, in this case. There is too much of a good thing, is my case here, and maybe it's time to just pull back a little bit on the reins, and, well, instead of comet jockeys, how about just the comets? Instead of moon possums, how about just the possums? Why are we jamming all this crap into here? And it's like, I understand there's a self-awareness to it, which I appreciate. It's almost like, yeah, we know these are dumb, but we're still going to throw them out there, and maybe we'll get some attention from people elsewhere. Maybe we'll sell some more merchandise to people who want to have moon possums on their chest. And I have my share of ridiculous T-shirts too, as you may have seen over the years of me coming in to do this show. But overall, my point is there is a cliff you can fall off there into self-parody, and trash pandas, space chimps, thunder sharks. The compound names bother me too, because it just becomes so redundant. If it's just one or two in minor league baseball or minor league sports, then it's fine. But it feels like half of minor league baseball, especially, is either a compound word or two words where they're looking to jam all these concepts into one thing. So the cliche I'm trying to ban is this over-the-top wackiness. It can be a little bit wacky or quirky, but you can go overboard. And in this case, whatever this team is going to be called, it's going to be terrible. Let's just look at it here. After reading the explanation, though, of trash pandas, I feel like that might be the best option, because it's just one thought. It's not thunder and sharks or space and chimps, moon and possums. It's just, this is what we call the raccoons, and we have a lot of them here in Huntsville. Maybe not the best endorsement for a city or moving to a city, but at the very least, it's authentic to the area. So the cliche to ban, too much wackiness in minor league sports. Let's tone it down a little bit to make it interesting when things are legitimately wacky and quirky and hipsterish. Anyway, that's my get off my lawn moment, I suppose. Maybe I'm just getting older, 33 years old. Is that too young to to tell someone to get off your lawn? Maybe not in the case of today's close to the show. Thanks again to Alan Saunders. Thanks to Tyler Zelenko and Brian Crawford, the founder of The Feast, along with Sarah Kramer, our two co-owners at The River's Edge. This has been Matt Geico reminding you that when the radio fades, you know life's moving fast. Appreciate you, and I'll talk to you next time. My final show before heading off to Europe for a 10-year anniversary trip with my wife, Jillian. So I'll empty the holster next week. I'll see what's left in this brain of mine and close out the summer in fine fashion, hopefully. That's all coming up next week on Geick's Got Game.